You start understanding as an adult what your dad has developed and built over many years. And when you see the production line and the hard work of the employees and the respect level that they had for him and the product that is being produced in the automotive industry, you put it all together, what an amazing individual he was to start this amazing company and follow through to the end.
Well, Jack was certainly an all-in guy. He was hardworking, he was laser-focused.
Everything he came at from a different way, and you could tell his mind was going a mile a minute. And you know, you can Google famous people with dyslexia, and you'll see Alexander Graham Bell, you'll see Nikola Tesla, and to me, you put Jack higher there and you have the big three of electrical engineers.
Dad was busy all the time. Mom took care of us running around.
And Jack never had to worry about what's going on back at home, because Phyllis, you know, at 5'2", she packs a strong punch, and she could take care of things back home, and he never ever worried about that.
He had Hi-Fi Haven, and he worked at Thermodisc at the time. So he was on Park Avenue, Hi-Fi Haven was there. Then eventually, as it grew, they ended up moving from, instead of the basement area, they got the upper floor, so that made them a lot easier to find.
They had started out as a background music business, Muzak, you know, the elevator music, I think people call it. We delivered it by telephone lines. They just had built the West Park Shopping Center, and they wanted our background music. So we leased a line from the telephone company, which cost more than we charged them for the music, just so we didn't look like a fool. And I said, Jack, you know, really the way to end this situation is for us to build an FM radio station. And he said, go, let's do it. Well, we did. So we built WVNO FM. Jack had to take a second mortgage on his house. I mean, it was lean pickings, because in those days, all we had was the background music business. Advertisers didn't advertise on FM radio. Well, it grew quickly, but he invested everything he had, and then some, in the ventures that he would tackle.
He also was very positive. He had many reasons to let challenges get him down, and he just wouldn't allow that. He was very positive, very forward-thinking.
When he was working for another company called Fasco, and he was developing parts in the automotive industry, Dad would patent things, and Fasco didn't know if they wanted to go on board with those products. So the salesman that Dad worked with in Detroit recognized that these parts were needed in Detroit.
And he wanted his own gig. He always did. So rented space above Mac McGinnis's old power tool company on Distal Avenue. Got the second floor only. Jack and a few other fellows constructed the necessary elements to be able to actually make something, you know, on a production line, you know, upstairs. And downstairs was Progress Industries before they built their own facility.
Dad wanted to get this bid with GM with the product he was producing, and they wanted to come down and see his production line and see if he was worthy.
So they have to come and inspect our facilities. Well, any facilities, man. We made 7 stupid little parts here that they love. So we went to Progress Industries and said, well, we talked them into taking a little break and making a 3-day weekend for their people. And so they would be closed on Monday.
So they set up a makeshift production line and had girls working on the line, girls answering phones.
Got my wife to agree to be the receptionist. Got 2 staff members at the station to agree to call the Progress Industries phone number. I don't know if we had a phone down there. Every 3 or 4 minutes, so that the phone would be constantly jingling. Phyllis was in charge of production upstairs, and she had all her girlfriends and everything. I don't know where all these people came from. Upstairs making nothing, just pretending to make stuff. We unscrewed the Progress Industries sign from the wall outside by the front door and screwed on High Stat Manufacturing Company.
So Monday morning, the GM guys came down and basically said, Jack, it looks like you got a great operation here, and shook hands, and that was really the go of contracts.
Jack always knew, he was a bright guy, he knew that where are you going to get your margins in the auto industry? Electronics. I mean, there's so much electronics in a car, and that's where defect ratios matter. And no car company wants a recall. So they're willing to pay a little bit more to make sure the electronics are right.
In an industry that I think is growing at the rate of about 2% a year in automotive, we're growing at a rate of about 10% a year. I think a lot of people look at our facility and just think we're making parts in there, and what they don't realize is we're also designing those parts. So there's a lot going in there. We're shipping to 50, 60, probably more than that, different customers around the world, and we're growing.
General Motors and all the big three, they actually had a rating system of all their customers, and we always ranked like 96 or so, somewhere very high.
You know, Jack stuck to the area of cars that were the most lucrative.
He tried to hire the best people he could, and he let them do their job, and he did not micromanage.
He was very trusting of anyone underneath him. He was a delegator, and he would trust you to do what you had to do until you broke that trust. And so many people in life did break that trust to him, and he would just move on. You know, you took away that privilege that he gave you to do something for him. When I came to work for him, we were questioned at a meeting if there should be an audit of the entity I work at. And after the meeting, he came up to me and said, "Oh, Larry, I'm so embarrassed that question was asked of you. I'm so sorry." And I said, "No, that's a fair question. You know, a lot of people would want to audit something like that." And he said, "But why?" I said, "Well, what if I stole from you?" And he said to me, "Are you planning to steal from me?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And he goes, "Then we don't need an audit." I just said, it just was showed, and he was so genuine about that. I found it a little comical, like, no one would be so trusting. But Jack was that guy. And it only made you want to work harder for him.
He believed in his employees, and he gave confidence in people to work hard, and he set examples.
I can remember stories of Jack would go out, and maybe there would be something out on the shop floor, something on the ground that needed picked up. Well, to sort of incentivize the workforce to keep the place clean, sometimes he would go out, he would slip a $10 bill under that, whatever that trash may be on the floor, just to encourage people to, to be invested, keep the area clean, keep the business clean.
He had, anyone that runs a business with 2,500 employees, that is not an easy task. And Jack always said to me, "I liked my company more when I had 200 employees than when I had 2,000 employees." He goes, "I like to know everyone's name, because then it felt like my business."
When you think of Jack, you remember him coming to his plant, walking around, seeing how things are, and he has his dog with him. A lot of times that meant he's bringing that dog inside the factory.
You'll never find a greater dog lover in all the world. He's the Pied Piper of dogs. And I actually always used to think that Jack was part dog, because dogs see in black and white. And in life, I think Jack saw in black and white, right and wrong. Everything was clear to Jack on what's right and wrong, or in making anything and doing anything. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way. You don't take shortcuts in life. You make it right or you don't do it at all. He was a perfectionist.
He would perfect things to a level of breaking them sometimes because he wanted everything to be so right with shimmying or fixing something.
He's always trying to improve things. Make it a better way, maybe dreaming up a new design.
That was far more interesting to him, far more motivating to him than the byproduct of the wealth, which really didn't mean much to him.
If you would see him out in the area, you wouldn't earmark him as, "Oh yeah, that's the guy who, he must own this business and I'm sure he has all this wealth." Because he didn't look the part, he didn't dress the part, he wasn't interested in that. He wasn't interested in the appearance of that.
Jack thought so many people with money were pompous and arrogant and really couldn't back it up. But you could sit in meetings with Jack, and Jack wouldn't brag about one thing, because there was no hubris about him, not one bit of arrogance. As successful as he was, he didn't sit there patting himself on the back once.
You know, I had an older brother, Charlie, that passed away in the 8th grade. He seemed to mimic more of my dad than any of us.
Charlie had a congenital heart issue when he was born. In his first 20 years, he needs major heart surgery.
You know, everyone thought that my brother was going to survive the surgery, the open heart surgery, and when he didn't come home, I know it just tore the family to pieces, but we all saw a big change in my dad.
And it changed that guy, and he became totally focused on business success.
You know, he worked hard anyway, and I think he tended to work harder and work maybe longer to keep his mind off.
Phyllis said a part of Jack died when Charlie died. And I think another part of Jack died when Jim died.
Growing up in Ashland together, they were considered the terror two of the community. I'm not going to say that carried on through into their adult life, but they were very close, and Jack was very protective of Jim.
I mean, there were two peas in a pod. I mean, you couldn't have one without the other.
They could talk about the same things over and over. It was like the yin and the yang, right brain, left brain. They were a part of each other.
Being a twin, an identical twin, and being competitive with your brother has a drive to prove who you are. And I often wonder if there was a lot to be said about that.
Jack started thinking about selling in 1997, 98, and he peaked the auto industry. It was never a better time. And the investment bankers expected it to garner a great price, and it was bid up, beyond expectations.
Most owners in a sale like that would want to be front and center. He couldn't get far enough away from it. It didn't mean anything to him. I think he was concerned that it would shine too much light on him, and he didn't want that. I think it was a bittersweet day for him because he had to let go of Heistat that he'd worked so hard and to create. But it also, I think, underscores the evolving of his priorities, and I don't think there's anything he would have preferred doing than to be with his family out in Aspen and skiing and snowboarding with his family when Heistat closed.
Jack gave a lot of his success in life to luck, which I always laughed at. If you were to ask Jack, how did he get where he did, he said, luck. His hard work created his luck. He was a workaholic, by any definition.
Well, it's interesting, the one phrase that he did used to say is, "You're wasting daylight if you're sitting still." And he always was in motion.
He went head on with confidence, with a positive attitude, using every ounce of strength and resource that he would have. And that's the way he was with his cancer. He was open-minded, he listened, he explored, he spoke to a number of people.
He also had excellent care throughout his illness. And I think he was very understanding of what was going on with him right up until he passed away.
And he never gave up. Even until the last few days of his life, he was still accepting visitors. He was still trying to be Jack.
The legacy of what Jack has built is it's unquestionable. In my own case, I know I've had employment for the last 19 years in a single location, at a single business, and that all started from what Jack did. And you could number people into the tens of thousands of people who have at one time or another worked at that location. And the fact that it's still there now, it's thriving, it's still employing a lot of people in the community, I think that speaks for itself as far as legacy.
Everything was an adventure for Jack. Heistat, maybe the biggest adventure of all. He was a paradox in the sense that he was enormously successful, but yet amazingly humble.
It's too bad he isn't alive to enjoy the evening, because he truly was an entrepreneur.
He never really liked having his name on things, but he liked participating. As far as recognizing him with all this, I'm sure he's up there being honored and has a big smile on his face.